Hi, everyone. So if you have spent any time with me over the past month and a half, you are probably well aware that I have become completely and totally obsessed with the television show Heated Rivalry. I'm one of those people that have just completely succumbed to the fever. I have watched the show. I'm reading the books. I'm listening to the soundtrack. I am really far gone on this. My brain chemistry has been completely and totally rewired. And my husband, Charlie, I think is pretty concerned about me and my well-being, but I assure you, this is actually healing my soul in ways I never could possibly have imagined. But of course, as I am watching Heated Rivalry, I am me. And so I'm always thinking about what are the ways in which this show is Jewish. And I just could not stop seeing this one comparison. So Heated Rivalry, of course, is about two hockey superstars who on paper should be bitter rivals because they are both the up and coming superstars in their league. But in real life, they are entangled in this deep and complicated and beautiful romantic relationship. And as I'm watching the show, all I keep thinking about is this is absolutely the story of King David and Jonathan, like we all were, obviously. So before we jump into this comparison, just a heads up that this is going to be full of spoilers. So if you have not watched Heated Rivalry, number one, what are you doing with your life? Please turn off Instagram, put your phone away, and go and watch Heated Rivalry. But also, turn this off because I don't want you to have any spoilers because it's a wonderful show. All right. So a little refresher on David and Jonathan, because as I can imagine, maybe you forgot from religious school who these characters are. So Jonathan is the son of King Saul, the king of Israel, which means that technically Jonathan should be next in line for the throne. But there's this complication because David has already secretly been anointed to become the next king. So on the surface, these two should absolutely be rivals. The first time we see them meet in the Bible is right after David defeats Goliath, right? Remember that story? David shows up. There's this giant Philistine named Goliath, and no one can defeat him. And David does it just with a slingshot. And the text says that when David and Jonathan meet after David slays Goliath, that the soul of Jonathan became bound up with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. You could literally almost hear Jonathan saying, "You're an awesome giant slayer to watch." The Hebrew word used there is nikshara, from the root kesher, meaning like connection or tied together or intertwined. And in this moment, David and Jonathan's lives become bound up with one another. It's also, might I add, in the feminine. And in the language that the Bible uses here, it's unusually intense. It's not very often that we get this language of emotional intensity in the Hebrew Bible. It's not exactly the most romantic or emotionally well-rounded piece of literature. But here, the text goes out of its way to tell us that Jonathan's love for David is deep and personal and profound. And then Jonathan does something really fascinating. Again, he is supposed to take over as the king, but instead what he does in this moment is he takes off his royal robe, his armor, his sword, his bow, and belt, and gives them to David. It's almost like the Prince of Israel symbolically handing over the signs of royalty. But it's also this incredibly intimate moment of vulnerability. Jonathan is literally disarming himself in front of David. It's almost like they used each other's first names, and it's just really emotionally profound and vulnerable. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the real rivalry in this narrative is not between David and Jonathan. It's actually between David and Saul, Jonathan's father. It's kind of like how the real enemies in Heated Rivalry are not really Shane and Ilya, if you think about it, but Shane and Ilya and the NHL, or societal expectations, right? About people who are different and don't fit into the mold and the rest of society. So Saul becomes jealous of David's success and even tries to get Jonathan to kill him, but Jonathan refuses. Instead, he chooses to protect David, even putting his own life at risk. So they obviously Jonathan can't show his loyalty to David in public because of who he is and who his father is. So there's a lot of secrecy that is happening. There's this moment where Jonathan sends David secret coded messages through arrows warning him that Saul is trying to kill him. And if you're a Heated Rivalry fan, it has the same energy as Shane quietly helping Ilya during that press conference. Publicly, they're supposed to be rivals. Privately, they're looking out for one another. David and Jonathan even make a covenant promising loyalty to each other and to each other's families. And at one point, Jonathan tells David, "Do not be afraid. My father Saul will never lay a hand on you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you." He's imagining what their future could look like together. It's a remarkable thing for the crown prince to say. It's clear where his loyalty lies and what he imagines his future to look like. And to me, it absolutely feels like Shane staying up all night crafting a plan at the cottage so that he and Ilya can find a way to be together someday. Okay, but back to our biblical story. Because Saul is hunting David, their bond has to remain largely hidden. And Jonathan quietly works behind the scenes to protect him. So the Bible also describes moments of intense emotional closeness between them. When they say goodbye before David goes into hiding, the text tells us they kiss one another and weep together, a scene filled with grief, tenderness, and profound attachment. And throughout history, scholars and readers have noticed just how emotionally charged this relationship feels. The text never explicitly labels it as a romantic relationship, but the language of love, devotion, longing, and physical closeness runs throughout the entire story. And again, it's not clear exactly what the nature of their relationship is, but it is important to note, right? Both men do marry. David, in fact, becomes quite the ladies' man, sometimes problematically so. He had 8 wives over the course of his life, and sometimes those relationships didn't go particularly well. For example, you could ask Bathsheba, and she will tell that story is quite grim. But Jonathan leaves behind a son when he dies, but the Bible tells us almost nothing about his marriage. So I absolutely read David as Ilya, maybe is interested in both men and women, and Jonathan as Shane and is only interested in men. So while this is all beautiful, unfortunately, our story has a rather tragic end. So Jonathan ends up dying in battle alongside his father, and when David hears the news, he writes this poem called The Song of the Bow, where he says, "I grieve for you, my brother Jonathan. You were most dear to me. Your love was wonderful to me, more than the love of women." It's one of the most emotionally raw moments in the entire Bible, and that might remind some viewers of something Ilya says in Heated Rivalry, that despite his reputation as a ladies' man, he had only ever truly loved one person, which is, of course, Shane. Later, when David becomes king, he keeps his promise to Jonathan. He brings Jonathan's son into the royal palace and cares for him for the rest of his life. In other words, the loyalty between them doesn't end with Jonathan's death. Okay, so that's the story. But what is the big difference between these two stories? In Heated Rivalry, Shane and Ilya have the potential for a future together. David and Jonathan never do. But both stories ask the same question. What happens when the world expects you to be rivals, but loyalty, devotion, and love lead you somewhere else entirely? Turns out, the Bible knew something about heated rivalries and complicated love stories long before smutty hockey shows.